Each one of these Americans was a victim of the everyday gun violence that takes the lives of more than 10,000 Americans every year. Violence that we cannot accept as routine. So I will use all the powers of this office to help advance efforts aimed at preventing more tragedies like this.
Hiding behind the Second Amendment doesn't cut it anymore. Hiding behind the Second Amendment can no longer be the shield for access.
Senator, we now know there was another armed man in the mall that day, a shopper who had the shooter in his gun sight, but never pulled the trigger.
So Mealy took cover inside a nearby store. He never did pull the trigger, and he stands by that decision.
I'm not beating myself up because I didn't shoot him, but I know that after he saw me, I think the last shot he fired was the one that he used on himself.
A gunfire erupted at the Mayan Palace Theater on Southwest Military last night.
Now, this shooting comes just days after a deadly rampage at a school in Connecticut.
Garcia was finally stopped by a sheriff's deputy who was working an off-duty job at the theater. He was shot 4 times. Garcia has since undergone surgery and is listed in stable condition at SAMSI.
The people who wrote that document owned slaves, oppressed women, and were short on tolerance.
I know business back there at my window.
Javita, this woman is 77 years old and she has bad eyesight, but she was not frazzled in the least about what happened. In fact, she was more annoyed than anything that this man broke her window.
No, I didn't. I don't try to talk to nobody breaking in.
Instead, she put that pistol to work.
And I shot at him. And I shot twice. And he wasn't in no big hurry about leaving. But he left.
The people who wrote that document owned slaves, oppressed women, and were short on tolerance.
Sunday night, George Greer says he had to use his rifle to stop what he thought was going to be an invasion of his Uniondale, Long Island home by a gang he thought might have been the vicious MS-13s.
The people who wrote that document owned slaves.
You know, start threatening my family, my life. Oh, you're dead. You're dead. I'm going to kill your, your family, your babies. You're dead. So when he says that, 20 other guys come rushing around the corner, and so I fired 4 warning shots.
The owner of a carryout in Elyria faces a struggle of life and death when a would-be robber tries to force his way through a door to the cash register of the store. The man eventually succeeds in getting through the door, but the owner has a surprise for him. A gun she carries in her hip pocket.
I reacted as fast as I could to shut the door to get a barrier between him and he starts busting through the door. He makes it through, and as soon as I see him, I shot him.
Miss America 1944 Venus Ramey stopped 4 intruders, however, who were trying to steal equipment from her Kentucky farm last week by shooting their tires. The 82-year-old needed to balance herself on her walker, by the way, to make those shots.
You tell that to the guy that I saw on a videotape of the LA riot, standing up on his rooftop, protecting his property and his life from an entire mob with one of these so-called assault weapons. Tell me that he didn't have a legitimate self-defense use.
I've taken about 7 hits from bricks, bottles, and other debris in the last...
trying to protect their businesses from any contingency. And thus far, there does not seem to be any looting or burning, at least right where they are.
I think he wants people, all of them up there, want people to see that they are armed and that you enter their properties at some risk.
As I mentioned, I'm not really mad at the guy that did this. And I'm certainly not mad at the guns that did this. They didn't walk in there by themselves and pull their own triggers. The guy that did it was a lunatic. That's like being mad at a rabid dog. I'm mad at my legislators for legislating me out of the right to protect myself and my family. I would much rather be sitting in jail with a felony offense on my head and have my parents alive.
That 911 call came from this rural Springtown home in Parker County. It was 12:30 Tuesday morning. James Dureau, his wife, and 2 children were asleep inside the home when they realized someone else had been in the home. Giroux grabbed his pistol and cornered the man outside. 8-year-old Christopher Lance Moore. It was then Moore jumped in his truck and locked the door and called 911 himself.
Parker County 911, where is your emergency? I'm not sure. I'm out in the country somewhere. Some guys got a gun on me.
To be honest with you, at this point, I'm thinking this dude is not all there.
So Giroux blocked Moore in with his pickup truck and told his 13-year-old son to cover him with a 12-gauge shotgun.
If he gets out the truck, shoot him in his legs. You ain't got to kill him, just shoot him in his legs.
If I remember right, I said, when you go home tonight, lock your doors and load your gun. You should say what you mean and mean what you say.
Penman tells me what he said was in response to frustration in the crowd of about 150 residents who came to voice their concerns about recent crimes in the area, including this murder of an elderly woman last week.
Let's be honest. We don't have enough police officers. We have too many criminals living in this city. We've had 45 murders this year. It's far too high for a city of this size.
The people who wrote that document owned slaves, oppressed women, and were short on tolerance.
Police say when the 3 teens pried open the door, a brave little girl was waiting for them, locked and loaded. Here's News 13's Maria Medina.
I was holding it like this and like that.
11-year-old Alyssa Gutierrez took matters into her own hands yesterday when 3 burglars broke into her home.
I was planning if they came right next to me, I would shoot them.
But Gutierrez never got the chance. Police say she spooked Miguel Marquez, Eduardo Zupiate, and Jesus Quintana.
The call came from the home of 84-year-old Gustava Harvey, who lives alone. That intruder kicked down her door and made directly for her bedroom. But there, Mrs. Harvey had a surprise for him, a vintage .38 caliber police special.
Fired one time, and in the straight direction that he was standing, the bullet struck the wall at about chest level. So he was very lucky not to be injured or killed by that.
It took just that one shot for the intruder to leave, and in a hurry.
And as a sportsman, I feel like I can speak with some freedom that I have owned firearms for over 40 years in my life. I know we can change.
The Second Amendment is not about duck hunting. And I know I'm not going to make very many friends saying this, but it's about our rights, all of our rights, to be able to protect ourselves from all of you guys up there.
Routinely at home. I mean, you haven't got at home?
Yeah, it's legal in the United States. It's part of our Constitution. You know, the right to bear arms is because that's the last form of defense against tyranny.
The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is the people, in contrast with the militia. It doesn't say the right of the militia to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It says the right of the people.
The people who wrote that document owned slaves, oppressed women, and were short on tolerance.
Because the people who wrote this had just fought a war for 2 years against the tyrannical state militia. They knew the time might come when they'd have to do that again. So they made the possession of weapons a right that the militia could never take away.